12 years ago, a magical prodigy was brutally murdered during a bloody struggle for power. Now, she returns in the body of a child, wielding not just one, but two-star relics of absolute destruction. What will little Rosian do to settle this blood debt with the killer who is still out there holding her treasures? Let's find out together. Rosian stood there, frozen, unable to believe the news she had just heard. She begged her brother to repeat what he just said, to make sure she hadn't misheard him. Kalian looked down with a somber expression and started explaining the details to his sister. He dropped the bomb. He had somehow caught the eye of the Emperor. Rosian panicked. This ruler was famous for a twisted hobby collecting handsome men from all over for his personal palace. In her mind, she saw a total creep building a male harem in the castle's darkest rooms. When Kalian confirmed it was all true, Rosian screamed that this was no time to be joking around. She paced around, asking if he understood how terrifying and dangerous that place really was. She warned him to guard his looks. Kalian just stared back, totally confused about his own face. While his charm was blinding to her, rumors confirmed the Emperor was obsessed with Kalian Wink. He was her only family and the heir to the Winiak clan, famous for their legendary swordsmanship. 3 years ago, they became family despite having no blood relation. Rosian was actually a person reincarnated from a past life. This wasn't your typical story of being reborn as a pampered noble lady. She had been a starving orphan, struggling to survive the brutal bite of the winter cold. One snowy day, she stumbled upon Kalian while he was in deep trouble. She heard him crying out for help and simply couldn't ignore someone in such a desperate situation. Using her past life's genius sword skills, she grabbed a stick to defend this total stranger. That simple wooden stick glowed with a sudden, blinding light and terrifying power. Rosian took down the attackers alone and saved him from certain death. Ever since she joined the Winiak family as Josie, she had dedicated herself to looking after her precious older brother. Kalian just smiled, telling her that her memory of that day was a bit different from reality. He teased her, asking if she only followed him home because she fell for his handsome face. Rosian broke into a cold sweat. Deep down, she knew his looks were exactly what hooked her. Kalian realized that for 3 years, she had been the one helping him in every possible way. He told her not to worry. After all, including his past life, he was 29 years old. Rosian munched on cake, insisting she had to worry because her brother was far too innocent. Even as the heir to a sword clan, Kalian was weak, had zero physical stamina, and was completely clueless when it came to women. He'd carry flowers from the village girls, completely oblivious to the fact they were all in love with him. When's the meeting? Tomorrow night at the Delphian River, right in the middle of the festival. She spiraled into a panic, imagining the creepy emperor tearing her brother apart like a wolf. To her, Kalian was the savior who kept her from dying in the street years ago. She swore she would protect his innocence from the Emperor's claws, no matter what it took. Hours later, her head was spinning, trying to figure out how to stop this fated encounter. She weighed every option, even praying for one of them to get sick just to cancel the date. Suddenly, she spotted Kalian walking all by himself in the distance. She noticed her brother was completely off his guard, totally oblivious to his surroundings. That was when a bold and slightly violent idea popped into her little head. She whispered to herself that in a crisis like this, the direct approach was best. The plan was simple: knock him out cold so he couldn't possibly meet the Emperor tomorrow. She apologized in her heart, convinced this was the only way to keep him safe. Rosian took a deep breath, charged forward, and swung her wooden sword with everything she had. But Kalian suddenly ducked to look at a flower, and her strike hit nothing but air. Then he started chasing a butterfly, making every single one of Rosian's follow-up attacks miss completely. Nearby knights watched, impressed by how hard the little girl was training in a foreign land. One knight whispered that despite her size, she fought like a real monster with incredible skill. Rosian was gasping for air, unable to wrap her head around what was actually happening. How could a sword genius fail to land a single hit? Suddenly, Kalian cried out in pain. She panicked and ran to him, terrified that he might actually be seriously hurt. Kalian sobbed while showing his sister a bee sting on his finger, looking absolutely pathetic. Rosian just sighed and grumbled that this was exactly what happened whenever he went off without her supervision. Callie gave her a warm smile and said that was precisely why he always worried about his little sister. Rosian tenderly bandaged his finger, once again begging him not to go and meet that emperor. When Callie asked why, she warned that nobody could ever predict what that old man might do to him. He pouted and asked if he really seemed that untrustworthy, leaving Rosian flustered and unsure what to say. Eventually, Rosian gave in, but she made her brother memorize her specific rules for self-defense. She told him to fight back hard if anyone touched him without permission. If they did not stop, he should strike their weak spots. And most importantly, if the opponent is stronger than you, you must yell for Josie immediately. The siblings high-fived after Callie agreed to every single one of his sister's demands. That night, Rosian tossed and turned in bed, consumed by endless worries. She revealed that she had secretly placed a tracking seal on Callie so she could locate him if he called her name. At first, she tried to convince herself she could finally get some rest. But a dark intuition nagged at her. She bolted upright, feeling like something was terribly wrong. Rosian decided to use a sleeping spell on her brother to ensure his absolute safety. She believed that if she could just keep him asleep until morning, then all their troubles would be solved. She crept into his room, promising herself to be gentle so she would not hurt him. But she stood there in shock, finding the bed completely empty and the sheets already cold. Rosian realized with a shock that her brother had vanished. She stared out the window, wondering where he could possibly be at this late hour. Meanwhile, in a dark corner elsewhere, the sound of painful groaning echoed through the air. Callie sat casually atop a pile of defeated guards. He thought it would be a real hassle if he got even one scratch. His little princess back home would absolutely lose her mind with worry. The scene shifts to the Fiel estate in the Delphian Empire, where an important family summit is underway. Rosian moved stealthily through the night, barely avoiding a passing patrol. Luckily, she found a large bush to hide in. She was determined to find her brother before things turned ugly. Stopping before a massive iron gate, she began calculating the best way to get inside. She whispered a reminder to herself to stay quiet so she would not make a sound. Suddenly, a strange voice called her a cute little bunny, making her jump in absolute terror. A loud rustling sound suddenly erupted from the bushes right behind the young girl's back. Rosian gasped in shock as a white rabbit suddenly lunged out from its hiding spot. The unexpected surprise caused her to tumble over, creating a loud crash that echoed throughout the area. Nearby guards heard the commotion and immediately rushed over with their weapons drawn to investigate. They surrounded her, demanding to know who she was and why she was sneaking around this restricted area. Rosian panicked as she realized her plan for a silent infiltration was now completely ruined. Noticing the guards looked a bit unsteady, she asked if they were okay, but they snapped back in denial. Rosian warned them sternly that if they forced her to use violence, they would certainly regret it. Ignoring her advice, the guards lunged forward, forcing her into a combat stance. She hesitated, unsure if she should really hurt them. In that moment of distraction, Rosian slipped and fell backward. Right at the last second, a strong hand reached out and grabbed her shoulder. Rosian looked up, dazed, having narrowly escaped what would have been a very painful fall. An elegant man appeared and scolded the guards for being so rude to a guest. He kindly asked the young girl if she was injured or felt any pain from the fall. As their master, he offered a sincere apology on behalf of his men. The man introduced himself as Luis Fell, the head of the prestigious Fell family. Rosian realized that the name Luis sounded quite familiar to her, though she could not place it yet. Noticing her sword, Luis suspected she was actually a disciple of the Winia family. He mocked her excitement about being in Delphia and told the little girl to just go to her room and rest. Luis demanded to know where Callie was, while Rosian questioned why the head of House Fiel was even there. Both clearly understood the laws forbidding high-ranking heirs and family heads from meeting in private. A heavy silence filled the air as they both grew visibly annoyed with each other's presence. Luis casually claimed he was Callie's friend, but his face gave away the fact that he was lying. He laughed, remarking that Callie was not the type of person to go around making enemies. Luis threatened to find the family head himself if she stayed silent. He intended to report a mysterious Wink disciple prowling around the mansion, which sent Rosian into a state of total panic. Fearing the consequences, Rosian finally admitted that Callie was not currently inside the mansion. Luis was stunned to find his target was nowhere to be found. He was fuming, convinced Callie was out, causing trouble again. Rosian couldn't grasp why he was so angry, but Luis's face showed a mysterious, calculating look. Rosian suddenly remembered that his Feigl family was also part of the elite. This clan was famous for shapeshifting, using their own bodies as lethal weapons. An idea struck the young girl, and a sly, knowing smile began to spread across her face. Curiosity got the best of Rosian as she asked Luis which animal he became when shifting. He confirmed every member of the Fell House could shift forms. Rosian excitedly pictured Luis as a cool black panther, capable of tracking down Sian in the blink of an eye. Luis was completely speechless at the little girl's overactive and wild imagination. Certain he was heading for Sian, Rosian was determined to follow. She quickly grabbed the edge of Luis's coat, her eyes sparkling with excitement and plea. Rosian begged him to take her along. She used the excuse of being worried that Callie was in danger from those plotting against him. Rosian's acting was so intense that Luis just watched in silence. But then, she casually told him to just forget about the whole thing. Luis sighed, explaining that as the heir to an elite clan, Callie was more than capable of protecting himself. He even threw in that help from a little brat like Rosian would only end up bruising Callie's ego and pride. Rosian was furious at being looked down on after being so polite. Without a word, she lunged onto Luis's back, catching him completely off guard and making him jump. Clinging to him tightly, Rosian insisted that she would definitely be useful during the journey ahead. Ignoring Luis's demands to let go, Rosian quickly cast a transformation spell directly onto him. A blinding flash of light enveloped them both right by the city walls. Louise angrily barked that she was nothing but a sneaky, troublesome little brat. Meanwhile, Rosian was purely excited to witness the true legendary power of the Fell family head. Elsewhere, Sian waited calmly, sensing Rosian was about to realize something. Kiljes suddenly appeared, having felt a massive wave of sword energy radiating from the nearby scene. She questioned whether this was an official declaration of war from the kingdom of Abi. Kallian laughed it off, denying the claim and insisting he was simply acting in self-defense. He wondered if the Emperor was secretly hunting him down. Narcissistically, Kalli asked if his own beauty was so great that the Emperor wanted to capture him for himself. He started speculating about the deeper, darker plots hidden by the young king. Kalli suspected he'd been brought to the Emperor's harem just to be sacrificed in some ritual. His eyes suddenly flashed with a cold, dangerous glint. Kallian claimed the Emperor was actually targeting a star relic, a revelation that left Kez completely stunned. He wore a triumphant and confident smirk. Kez's reaction only served to strengthen the belief that Sien's judgment was spot on and absolutely correct. Back to Luis, who had now transformed into a powerful black panther sprinting through the forest. Annoyed, he called Rosian a pesky brat from the Windiak house. Luis wondered why the girl kept grinning so satisfyingly during the entire trip. Rosian teased him, saying she always thought he'd be much more mature than this. But in reality, Luis was still growing, looking much smaller than a fully grown black panther. Stung by the truth, he snapped at her for ignoring a clan head's dignity. He also wondered why he'd shifted so suddenly before even reaching his official coming of age. Luis told himself he'd need much harder training upon returning. At the same time, Luis felt Rosian was a nuisance. He realized that if he hadn't brought her, this stubborn girl would have hunted for Kalli alone anyway. Rosian excitedly cheered for their teamwork, but Luis just wanted her to shut up for a change. They had covered quite a distance since leaving the mansion. Luis complained that he would have been much faster if he wasn't carrying a heavy kid on his back. Rosian was offended at being called heavy, noting that was no way to speak to a lady. Luis mocked her lady title, figuring she was just holding a grudge. They both came to a sudden halt as they sensed something strange in the air. Luis could feel Sien's mana radiating powerfully from somewhere deep within the city below. Rosian worried because the search area was too vast to pinpoint a target. She suddenly froze when she thought she heard someone calling out her name. Rosian realized that the magic she'd previously cast on Kalli was finally starting to respond. Luis the Black Panther accelerated instantly, following her lead. He grumbled about the girl treating him like nothing more than a common horse and carriage. With absolute confidence, Rosian declared she knew exactly where Kalli was hiding out. Meanwhile, Sian mocked the Emperor as a fool for accidentally revealing the relic's location. Kiljes had clearly leaked mana on purpose, hoping to bait her out. She privately judged her opponent to be far more dangerous than he appeared to be. Kiljes wondered why the Winiak heir was rumored to be such a weakling. As the head of the Kest family, she decided she wouldn't let him walk away without a fight. Knowing Sian was after the star relic, she prepared herself to take immediate action. Kiljes declared she would wipe his memories of the day's events. Suddenly, Kalli appeared right behind her with lightning speed, whispering that erasing those memories was a terrible idea. He leaned in and whispered that the ancient relic had actually belonged to him for a very long time. Kiljes froze, stunned by his sudden speed and presence. A cold, sharp blade was already pressed against her throat before she even realized he had moved. Sian spoke about death with total indifference, as if it were just an unavoidable part of being human. He even cruelly asked if she would regret dying a bit sooner than expected. Kiljes felt a thick, terrifying bloodlust radiating from the young man. A mysterious figure watched from the shadows, judging that Kalli still had a lot of growing up to do. Kiljes stood paralyzed by the overwhelming power, wondering what kind of monster this man truly was. She tried to warn him about the consequences of attacking a high-ranking clan leader. Such an act would surely ignite a brutal and bloody war. Kalli responded with a cold stare, stating he did not care about that at all. Energy exploded as his blade struck the ground. Suddenly, Sian changed his tune, flashing a grin and claiming he was only joking around. He flashed a fake, hollow smile, insisting that he also had no desire for a war to break out. Kilgist watched him with deep suspicion, unsure of what his true intentions really were. Sen suggested they act like nothing happened, since ganging up on one person was dishonorable. He then sensed someone else approaching the area. He stared into the distance, muttering that he was standing there waiting for Rosian. Kilgest was completely speechless, convinced this young man was suffering from some serious mental issues. She tried to slip away quietly, but Kallian blocked her path. He then proposed a deal involving a serious promise between the two of them. Kalli stood amidst the ruins, thinking this compromise was not a bad deal for Kaigas. He began cleaning up the scene to erase all evidence. Kalli even considered giving himself a few minor wounds to make the act look more convincing for Dat. Just then, Rosian came running in a panic, calling out for her brother. She looked terrified as she took in the chaotic scene. Rosianne frantically asked what had happened. She was visibly shaken, fearing her brother had been seriously hurt in the fight. Sian called out his sister's name softly as soon as he saw her appear. He immediately pulled Rosianne into a hug, acting scared. In a weak voice, he asked who had dared to bully his precious little bunny. He held her tightly as if trying to shield her from every possible danger in the world. Rosianne glared at the man lying nearby. She accused him of claiming to be an imperial knight just to try and lay hands on her. Rosianne explained that she kicked him where it hurts and ran away, eventually getting lost because she did not know the way. After finishing her story, Rosianne was still visibly trembling from the ordeal she had just survived. She sensed a strange energy but heard no noise. Louise suddenly appeared and asked why she had not called for him much sooner. The girl admitted she did not think he would actually come. Sian continued hugging her, calling Rosianne the greatest treasure of his life. Louise stood by with a sarcastic look, unable to believe the ridiculous display he was witnessing. He demanded to know what Callie had actually done at the scene of the struggle. Louise insisted he could feel the thick scent of sword intent everywhere, not just the evidence of a simple kick. Rosianne immediately defended her brother, asking Louise why he was being so aggressive. Sian told her not to mind his constant grumbling. He even acted friendly, greeting Louise as if they were two old friends catching up. Sien's fake attitude made Louise extremely frustrated. When Louise called her a midget, Rosianne was deeply offended by the insult. He remarked that the way she treated Sian was nothing like how a normal disciple should act. Rosianne proudly claimed she was the youngest genius of the prestigious Wink family. Louise thought that was a blatant lie anyone could see through. Callian suddenly pretended to have a headache to get rid of Louise and end their annoying conversation. He played the part so well that Rosianne worriedly asked if he felt like fainting or getting sick. She helped him walk away, telling Louise to talk later because her brother desperately needed to rest. Before walking off, Sian shot a sharp, icy glare at Louise, warning him never to bother his sister again. Louise stood frozen, watching the siblings walk away. Once they left, the ancient mansion fell into a heavy, eerie silence. Kilgist appeared and asked Louise if Callie had truly managed to silence everyone involved. The head of the Kilgist family admitted she had no excuses left for such a massive oversight. She revealed the memories of the Emperor and the head guard were wiped to keep today's secrets hidden. Louise felt the conditions were suspicious but acceptable for now. Kilgist remained anxious, wondering if this was truly the only way to solve it. She sat in silence, realizing Owen Winds had been hiding a literal monster as his successor all this time. Kilgist grilled Louise, demanding to know the real identity of that little girl standing next to Sienna earlier. Louise simply repeated that the girl appeared to be a mere disciple who was granted the Winiac surname. Kilgist noted that despite her age, any child given a name from a high noble clan is a dangerous elite. She suspected the child's mana felt suspiciously similar to the KGES family signature. The matriarch stared blankly at the scene with a look of deep concern. Her eyes flashed with deep suspicion regarding who Rosianne actually was underneath it all. Kilgist was determined to find a way to meet that child again and uncover the truth. Louise noted that Sian was incredibly overprotective, so getting close to her wouldn't be easy. A dark idea formed. Kilgist reached for the invitation box with a cryptic, knowing smile. She declared she would invite the head, the heir, and Rosianne of House Windsea to the Royal Palace Gala. Back at the mansion, steaming hot cocoa sat on the table. The siblings sat together while Sian tenderly asked if his sister felt better yet. Sian leaned in, whispering to Rosianne about some crucial intel he had gathered from the captain of the guard. He revealed that the Windsea family's legendary star relic was currently being kept secret deep within Delian Castle. Callian smiled, noticing his sister looked every bit as shocked by the news as he was. Rosianne slipped up, asking if he meant that old broken sword. Her specific question made Sian freeze, stunned by her sudden knowledge. Rosianne realized the blunder immediately and started scrambling for a way to fix her mistake. Sian was absolutely floored that his sister was so well informed about the exact condition of the star relic. Rosianne just laughed it off, awkwardly claiming she just happens to pick things up. Thinking fast, she lied and blamed Louis Fiegel, saying she heard the details directly from his own mouth. Callian flared with instant jealousy, demanding to know when the two of them had become so close. He couldn't fathom that they were tight enough to be discussing high-level secrets like the star relic already. Sian reminded her that Rosianne had only met Louise for the first time today. He felt completely devastated, suspecting his sister might actually want a different, cooler brother like Louise instead. Rosianne panicked, frantically denying it and wondering why her brother was coming up with such weird ideas. Callian felt pathetic and weak, convinced he was a burden who couldn't even protect himself without worrying her. Rosianne comforted him instantly, promising that Sian would always be her one and only incredible big brother. Suddenly, Owen Windsea appeared with a towering presence, calling out to his two children in a stern voice. He barked at the two troublemakers, ordering them to get to his office for a serious talk right now. His voice was cold as he reminded them of his strict warning never to cause trouble in a foreign land. Both Callian and Rosianne trembled in fear under their father's terrifying fury. He slammed several letters onto the table and told the two of them to read the contents themselves. Callian was stunned to realize they were official invitations sent directly from the Delian royal family. He wondered why the palace would invite a child like Rosian by name. Owen explained he'd heard about their clash with the Feigl patriarch. Rosian scrambled to explain that Luis actually helped her find Callian after they got separated in the city. Owen glared, warning that even as children, they must be extremely wary of the other great noble houses. Rosian bowed her head, looking truly remorseful in the face of her father's strictness. Owen then asked if anyone had specifically grilled her about her past or her true identity. She innocently claimed nothing happened, though a small seed of doubt was already beginning to take root. Sian stepped up to take the full blame, begging his father to stop being so hard on Rosian. He turned and told his sister to stay at the mansion and ignore the royal invite for her own safety. Rosian couldn't believe his choice. She remembered how confident he was yesterday before being captured so easily, which made her very uneasy now. The little girl firmly raised her hand and declared she was going to that party no matter what happened. Owen was stunned by her sudden resolve. Rosian begged her father for permission, refusing to ever let her brother face danger alone again. Owen went quiet, asking his daughter why she felt it was so vital for her to tag along. Rosian swore an oath that she wouldn't cause even a single ounce of trouble during their palace visit. Owen ordered Rosian to stay while commanding Sian to leave the room immediately. The little girl was gripped by panic as she faced the cold severity of the family head all alone. Callian also felt uneasy, asking his father if this private conversation was really a necessary thing. He worried about what his father intended to discuss with his little sister while he wasn't there to watch. Owen shot his son a piercing look that made Callian feel an overwhelming sense of heavy pressure. Callian was forced to step outside, his heart heavy with immense worry for Rosian. Suddenly, a massive, thunderous noise echoed through the room, making the air feel impossibly heavy. Owen stepped in to scold and discipline Sen for his blatant defiance toward his own father's strict commands. Rosian asked Han with deep concern after noticing Sian seemed to be suffering in great pain. She comforted her brother, telling him to go ahead while promising to catch up very soon. Rosian even whispered a sweet promise to give him a goodnight kiss before bed. She even promised to sing his favorite lullaby, a gesture that moved Sen to the very core. Watching from afar, Owen let out a heavy sigh of disappointment, disgusted by his son's obvious weakness. Sian quietly left for the meeting, leaving Rosian wondering why he didn't say goodbye to their father. The young girl stood there, completely baffled by her brother's strange and distant behavior today. Suddenly, Owen walked over and called out to Rosian. His voice turned stern as he asked if she understood why he took her in as a disciple. Rosian panicked, her mind racing for an answer to such an incredibly sudden and heavy question. She wondered if he was subtly reminding her to stay humble and remember she was only living there as a guest. Contrary to her fears, Owen looked at her thoughtfully and admitted that he was actually deeply worried about her. Rosian was stunned, failing to grasp the hidden meaning behind her father's vague and cryptic words. Fear began to creep in as she wondered if some unseen danger was lurking in the shadows ahead. E stared at her with a deadly serious expression, pointing toward the distance and insisting that he was the person she needed to watch out for the most. Rosian froze, her eyes wide with shock because she couldn't believe her beloved brother was someone she had to fear. Owen explained that since she had a weakness for handsome faces, her brother C might exploit that. He warned she was the type of person who would use good looks to manipulate others. Rosian laughed it off, telling him not to worry because she would be the first to scold Sian if he ever tried that. En sighed, thinking the girl was either incredibly pure or just hopelessly naive, before gently patting her on the head. He reminded her that Callie wasn't weak, but his mental state was often unstable. That's why he wanted her to stay by his side at all times. In return, the Wink family would be her safest sanctuary. Ogun demanded she keep an eye on C so he would not do anything bizarre at the palace. Rosian was thrilled to hear she could accompany her brother and thanked her father over and over again. She skipped away happily, relieved that instead of getting in trouble, she had received her father's full approval. Rosian rushed into the room to call Sian, still wondering why Owen changed his mind so fast. She found Sian lying in bed, his face pale and twisted in sheer agony. Panicked, she rushed to his side as he struggled to breathe. She cried out his name in terror, realizing the situation was far worse than she had imagined. Touching Callie's forehead, she realized his skin was burning with an incredibly high fever. Rosian wondered in horror if today was the day that dreaded illness would finally strike. Callian gave her a weak, faint smile to comfort his terrified sister. These were the symptoms of star fever, an overload that happens when a human body cannot endure the power of a supreme entity. Sien's condition was exceptionally severe, and the timing of these painful outbreaks was completely unpredictable. Seeing her brother in such pain, Rosian gripped his hand and promised to sing the lullaby as planned. She sang softly, wishing him a peaceful sleep filled with the scent of blooming roses. Hearing his sister's voice brought Callie a sense of absolute relief and profound inner peace. Rosian knew that, in reality, she was using a touch of magic to help him calm down. Callian weakly asked if she would promise to stay by his side forever, just like this. Rosian smiled and promised she would never leave as long as he needed her. She watched closely to make sure he had finally drifted into a deep sleep. Rosian realized she couldn't keep treating these fevers by hand forever. But for now, there was a far more important task she had to complete immediately. Meanwhile, Callie remained fast asleep with a mysterious smile, fueled by the dark desire to keep her with him for the rest of his life. The next day at the palace, the children were busy playing games with one another. A strange boy appeared, carrying himself with total confidence. It was actually Rosen in a male disguise, leaving Callie absolutely stunned by her transformation. He couldn't believe his little sister could transform herself into such a convincing and perfect young boy. Rosian playfully asked how she looked and if she was fit for the Emperor's harem. The bold question left Sen completely frozen in pure shock. Rosian was calculating her next move, having heard a Wink family star relic was hidden somewhere inside the palace. She suspected it was being kept in a highly classified location that no one else knew about. She reasoned that the Emperor brought Callie here to use his unique powers to stabilize that very relic. As the relic's true master, Rosian was determined to go and see for herself. Callie watched his sister, secretly admiring what a precious and adorable little brother she made. Rosian excitedly told her brother not to worry and to have total faith in her abilities. However, she reminded herself that she needed more practice so she wouldn't ruin the entire plan. Rosen wondered how her brother could still recognize her, even though she had used such powerful disguise magic. I was lost in thought when a ball smacked my head. Ow! Those kids demanded I kick it back, which was beyond annoying. I snapped at them. If they wanted a favor, they should start with an apology first. I crossed my arms, disgusted. Kids these days really have zero manners, don't they? Sian rubbed my head, asking softly if I was okay. A woman nearby remarked how close we seemed. That gave me an idea. I threw an arm around his neck and declared us the world's best siblings. Sian just smiled. He knew he could never win against his little sister. Just then, a servant arrived. It was time for Sen to attend the meeting. Owen appeared, searching for me. He pointed at the boy standing there and asked, "Who is this child?" I quickly explained my disguise. I had to look tough to protect my big brother. Owen looked relieved. My disguise was a complete success, and I felt proud that even my own father failed to recognize me at first. The palace loomed ahead as we prepared for this massive family meeting. Ao reminded me that only heirs could enter. I was told to stay outside and wait. Sian looked worried. He asked if I really planned to wear that outfit all day. Suddenly, a voice called his name. The Emperor appeared with white hair and a bright smile, looking quite pleased. I froze. This Emperor looked much younger than I ever would have imagined. The young king offered a sincere apology for his rude behavior the night before. He claimed he just wanted a private word with the Wink heir, but everyone misunderstood him. He suddenly grabbed my hand, startling me. Then he suggested we meet somewhere more private next time. He promised to prepare everything Sian liked. It made my skin crawl. My brother was walking into a trap. I jumped in to stop him. The Emperor stared at me, clearly shocked that a child would dare interrupt his conversation. I quickly made an excuse about Sian being busy and begged him to take me instead. My bold move made the air around the palace turn cold. He asked curiously if this boy was also part of the Wink clan. I proudly said my name was Wink. He remembered rumors about the Windiak family adopting a child years ago and confirmed N was the one. He looked at me with calculating eyes. Then he asked if I liked the sanctuary. He called me exquisite and said I would fit right in. What a total creep, I thought. Finally, he turned to C and asked to borrow this little brother for a bit. Callie hesitated, looking at me for a signal. I told him to trust me completely. Sian smiled and guarded a nod, trusting his sister's fierce determination. He left me with the Emperor, believing I would be safe. The carriage rolled off as palace schemes began to take root. The guard bowed, receiving strict orders. No one was allowed inside, especially not the high-profile guests. After receiving orders, he immediately stood guard, sealing off the heavy doors. Still in disguise, panic set in. I was alone with the Emperor. No guards, nothing. I cursed him silently. I did not want to spend another second with this freak. The Emperor confirmed my name as Enwink, which made me jump. He flashed a mysterious smile and promised me that something truly wonderful was waiting ahead. I played along, but deep down I was on high alert. He pivoted to history, asking if I had read about the mainland at the estate. He mentioned the 3 missing star relics. They vanished after the First War and stayed gone. He had some nerve, talking about missing relics while he secretly kept one for himself. Ancient texts say star relics are weapons of pure, celestial energy. In the past, powerful beings fought bloody wars to claim their power. Families try to keep balance, but human greed never truly fades. The Emperor stared off, admitting that he was just as power-hungry. Rosian thought to herself, if he thinks I haven't noticed his wicked plot, he is dead wrong. I won't let a creep like the king get anywhere near Callie or our sacred star relic. As I walked, my resolve hardened. I'd protect my brother and our family's legacy at any cost. We stopped before a massive, ornate door. The Emperor announced that we had finally arrived. The moment the door swung open, a violent tremor shook the ground right beneath my feet. I stared, blinded by the brilliant light pouring from the secret chamber. The Emperor told me to step closer and face whatever was waiting inside. A mysterious voice echoed from within the golden glow, demanding that I show my face. My heart skipped. It was the Wink family star relic, the treasure that vanished long ago. Suddenly, my body felt weightless. I was drifting, hovering helplessly in the middle of the air. A stunningly beautiful woman appeared, gently lifting my chin to admire my features. She complimented my beauty, but then she stopped, sensing something unusual about me. She saw right through me. She knew I was a girl, not the boy I pretended to be. I was paralyzed. I couldn't believe my secret identity had been stripped away that easily by a complete stranger. Elsewhere, Regina from the Kilges family was attending a high-stakes meeting with the other powerful clan leaders. Dorian, the head of the Lia family, suddenly spoke up. He had a major confession regarding the star relics. He sat there in grim silence, feeling the heavy gaze of the other masters on him. Oh. The Wink leader asked if he was talking about the Ryler family's lost rebirth crystal. Dorian broke into a sweat and admitted they were exactly right. He dropped a bombshell. The crystal hadn't just gone missing, it was stolen 12 years ago. Regina slammed the table, demanding to know why he had waited over a decade to tell them. Kronos of the Elwa family looked stunned. That 12-year timeline seemed to hit a nerve. Dorian bowed his head in shame. He explained they tried to handle it privately, but after failing for years, they finally had to ask for help. Regina held her head, exhausted. She couldn't believe a secret that big had been buried for so long. Owen turned to Kronos, asking if the prophetic eye in his right socket could see a way forward. Kronos stayed silent, clutching his right eye as if he were in sudden, agonizing pain. He confessed that if the crystal hadn't vanished, he might have fixed his condition. The entire room went dead silent as they saw how much he was suffering. He revealed a jagged scar across his eye, explaining he'd been mauled by a vicious beast. He had been desperately waiting for the crystal's power to finally heal his permanent wound. Regina realized the truth. Both the Ryler treasure and the Elgwa prophetic eye had disappeared exactly 12 years ago. An eerie silence fell over Owen. He seemed lost in thought, piecing together the dark puzzle. He found it pathetic. The leaders of the most powerful families in the world couldn't even protect their own sacred relics. Regina noted the timing. It was too perfect. Whoever was behind these thefts had to be the same person. The Emperor watched the chaos quietly. He asked if anyone had a specific suspect in mind for these crimes. Back with Rosian, the mysterious woman continued their conversation about her identity. She called her Rosen Winiak directly, making the girl jump in pure shock. Rosian stammered, trying to explain that her boyish disguise wasn't meant to deceive anyone or cause any harm. She felt lucky the Emperor hadn't noticed her ruse, but this was different. She never expected the star relic would be able to see right through her. The woman teased her, calling her a silver-tongued brat, then pointed out she wasn't even a real Winiak family member. She yelled at the child, offended that Rosen stood there, talking while smelling like the manna of a completely different noble family. Panic set in. Rosian wondered if the woman knew she was a reincarnated soul from the very first glance. She tried to stay calm, insisting that regardless of the past, she was a part of the Winia family now. The mysterious woman brushed her off, telling the girl she didn't want to hear any more of her excuses. She set one condition. If Rosian wanted her favor, she had to do something first. The strange request? She had to bring the woman a truly handsome man. Rosian was baffled. Why would such a powerful ancient being make such a weird and superficial demand? The woman simply declared that she had an absolute weakness for men with beautiful faces. Rosian stood frozen. The real reason for this harem of handsome men was just to satisfy the relic's personal taste. But then, a thought struck her. This could be the perfect chance to turn things around. She quickly agreed, claiming she knew the perfect handsome man and would bring him there immediately. The mysterious woman was intrigued, asking if it was true that the girl knew such a stunning specimen of a man. With eyes sparkling, Rosian promised to bring a beauty so radiant that they could shine bright from outer space. Back at the palace, the Emperor lamented the fact that they hadn't found any clues or culprits in 12 long years. Dorian of House Lila pleaded for everyone to join forces and help recover his family's lost holy relic. He promised that if they found the crystal, he would grant every high family unlimited access to use its power. The Wink patriarch agreed to cooperate fully, as he needed that power to finally heal the eyes of young Kronos. The Emperor ordered houses Fel and Kes to lead the investigation and track down every clue within the Empire's borders. Owen took personal responsibility to investigate the kingdom of Abi and search for the relic's whereabouts. Dorian was deeply moved, offering his sincere and heartfelt gratitude to everyone who had agreed to help him. Regina remained deeply troubled by the mass disappearance of all those holy relics exactly 12 years ago. She cast a discreet glance at Sian, who sat silently throughout the meeting, wrapped in an air of mystery. Regina wondered if there was a hidden connection between the death of that talented disciple and the sudden appearance of the Winiac child. She suspected that high-level brainwashing or a powerful curse was being used to keep the truth hidden from them. Deep down, Regina knew only one person was capable of performing such terrifying and complex high-level magic. She remembered the Winiac child's mana carried the distinct traits of House Kygus, which fueled her growing suspicions. Regina was shocked by the eerie resemblance between this new child and the beloved disciple she had always cherished. However, the reality was that the talented child had supposedly died during the bloody succession war 12 years ago. She wondered to herself if it was truly possible for someone who had died to return to the world of the living. Her thoughts were cut short by the distant sound of Rosian's name. The secret door opened as the Emperor and Rosian emerged. The young king excitedly asked how the meeting between the little girl and the holy relic had turned out. Rosian pretended to be furious, asking the Emperor if there was anything he wanted to confess to her right now. The Emperor bowed and apologized for his deception, explaining he had gathered countless handsome men to appease the relic, but ultimately still needed the Winiac family's unique power. Rosian asked him what he would do if she told her father, Owen, since he certainly wouldn't let this go. The Emperor grew anxious at her threat, while Rosian secretly cursed him as a pervert, even though the relic was the real weirdo. The little girl questioned why he felt the need to hide the existence of the star relic from everyone like that. He admitted that if Owen knew his family's relic was being held captive here, he would surely fly into a rage. The Emperor explained that he initially saw it as a grand opportunity, but soon realized just how dangerous it was. He discovered that the Great Destruction held a massive power, unlike any other relic, capable of wiping out all of existence. That terrifying truth left him fearful of what might happen if such power were ever misused. He feared the balance of the high families would crumble, sparking another brutal war across the entire continent. Rosian listened closely, and had to admit that the Emperor's explanations actually made a bit of sense. Still, she wondered why he had gone out of his way to try and recruit Callie to come with him. The Emperor explained that since Sian was known for his gentle nature, he thought he would be the best person to soothe the relic. He expressed his sincere regret for the deception and hoped she could find it in her heart to understand. Rosian watched him with a calculating gaze, but it seemed she was finally beginning to believe his sincere confession. Eventually, she decided not to tell her father, understanding that adults often have their own difficult burdens and hidden circumstances. The Emperor thanked her for understanding and told her she could just call him uncle now, leaving her completely stunned. Since it was getting late, the young king suggested that the entire Wink family stay and rest at the palace tonight. He wondered why the sanctuary grew so quiet after she entered, questioning if the relic had taken a special liking to her. Elsewhere, Rosian moved through the shadows while back in her true form. The girl gestured for them to stay silent to avoid being caught by any guards. Despite promising her father she would stay out of trouble, Rosian knew she couldn't ignore anything related to the powerful star relic. 6 hours earlier at the magnificent palace, Callie had pressed her to find out if the relic was actually there. Rosian confirmed it and joked about how much it loved handsome men, while secretly praising her own clever skills for gathering information. Rosian confessed to Sian that she had accidentally promised to bring him face to face with the relic. She thought that since this was a Winiac treasure, it was only natural for Sian to become its rightful master. Rosian wore a calculating smile, certain that if the relic chose Sian, not even the Empire could stop them. They decided to sneak in together once the sun went down. Sian stared at the door, realizing he had finally reached his goal. Noticing how tense her brother looked, Rosian checked on him with a gentle voice. She patted his head, reassuring Callian that the holy relic would definitely love him, so there was really nothing to worry about. With a glowing face, Rosian led her brother inside. Sian offered a grateful smile as they both reached out and touched the shimmering, radiant door together. Meanwhile, at a gloomy graveyard, a blue-haired man and Kilguest stood frozen as they stumbled upon a truly horrifying discovery. Rosetti's body had vanished from the coffin without leaving a single trace. The blue-haired man was baffled. Bones do not simply turn to dust in 12 years, and the coffin showed no signs of being broken into recently. Kill confirmed those dark suspicions with a single, quiet nod of her head. They concluded that someone had stolen Rosetti's remains a long time ago. Kilgest remained speechless, stunned by the sheer weight of this revelation. The blue-haired man slammed his fist against the casket in a rage, unable to fathom who would dare disrespect the dead like this. His eyes flashed with a cold intensity as he connected the dots. She had passed away exactly when the resurrection crystal was stolen. Though he could not be certain yet, Kilgest believed there was a deep, dark connection between these two events. She still did not know the true goal of the mastermind behind this. Kilgest thought back to Rosetti, the once-in-a-century genius of her family. The timing of the crystal theft and the missing body was just too perfect to be a coincidence. Then there was that child. The sudden appearance of a girl who looked exactly like Rosetti only deepened her suspicion. Kilgest could not accept that these events were just random chance. She tightened her grip, telling herself she absolutely had to find a way to verify who that child really was. Kilgest wondered if it was possible. Could that child actually be Rossetti, somehow returned to the world of the living? Suddenly, a massive surge of mana exploded, catching them both off guard. They could feel a raw, overwhelming power radiating from the direction of the temple. They both turned toward the palace, which was now swallowed by a strange, haunting light. Back at the temple, the relic entity was paralyzed with fear by the person Rosian had brought. Innocently, Rosian reminded the spirit that she had kept her promise to bring a beautiful man. Furious, the relic ordered them to leave immediately, claiming she could smell a revolting, disgusting scent coming from them. She sensed the presence of absolute chaos surrounding Callian. Rosian clenched her fists in frustration, hearing her brother being insulted in such a way. The young girl demanded to know how she dared to speak about her brother with such a disrespectful tone. Rosian could not stand seeing her perfect brother being insulted. Meanwhile, Callian flashed a haunting smile as shadows began to consume his entire body. Rosian stood there, completely dazed, unable to understand what was happening to her brother right before her eyes. Callian stomped his foot, declaring that he had finally found it. He lunged forward and snatched the floating holy relic sword, leaving the entity in a state of pure shock. She clicked her tongue in disgust as Sian touched her. A blinding explosion of light erupted the moment he tightened his grip around the sword's hilt. Panicking, Rosian screamed her brother's name as she witnessed the horrific scene unfolding. She was terrified by the unrecognizable expression on Callian's face. His hand was being scorched by the raw, violent energy of the holy relic. Despite the agonizing pain, he refused to let go, only tightening his grip even further. Callian told the relic to stop its futile resistance, because in the end, it would belong to him. The spirit vowed she would sooner fade into nothingness than offer herself to his kind. Rosian was lost and confused, having no idea what to do in the middle of all this chaos. She was terrified that her brother might actually die if this didn't stop. On top of that, Rosian realized that Sian was acting in a way she had never seen before. This was definitely not the kind, gentle brother that she had grown up with. The relic entity mocked him, laughing at his attempt to deceive the very stars themselves. She then called out the name of the chaotic shadow dwelling within Callian. The shadow entity commanded the relic to watch its mouth, reminding the spirit that it was nothing more than mere dust born from the stars. It ordered the relic to stay silent and submit to its new master. Rosian suddenly rushed forward, throwing her arms around Sian and begging him to stop. "Please, you have to calm down." She asked him frantically if something terrible had happened to change him this way. Sian froze, whispering the name Rosie when he looked at his sister. Suddenly, the holy sword snapped at Rosian, calling her a deceitful little brat. Rosian stood there in shock, having no idea why she was being accused of such a thing. A burst of light threw the girl backward as she screamed in terror. Callian was also hit by the shockwave and collapsed. Rosian scrambled to her feet to help him. The sword hovered right in front of her face, declaring that she had now lied to it twice. It declared that Rosian would pay a heavy price for her deception. Desperate, Rosian pleaded with the relic to just wait and let her explain. She insisted that she really had brought a stunningly handsome young man, exactly like the spirit had asked for. Rosian argued that if someone as beautiful as Sian wasn't good enough, then absolutely no one else on the planet would ever satisfy it. The holy relic erupted in a white-hot fury, screaming that his face was the absolute least of her concerns. She demanded the young girl look past the surface and stare directly at the suffocating black miasma currently swirling around Callie. Rosian froze as she realized a horrific truth she had been blind to for so long. She wondered if this very darkness was what had driven her brother into such a state of madness. The relic entity decided it would place its trust in this child just one more time. She proposed that Rosian form a sacred pact to use that power to purify Kian once and for all. Rosian was absolutely stunned to discover that she was destined to become the true master of the star relic. The girl watched Sian with worry as he drifted in a daze, showing no signs of waking up soon. Although she originally planned to give this role to her brother, she realized there were simply no other options left. Rosian resolved to strip away the suspicious darkness clinging to Sian first. Bravely, she raised the sword high and channeled the ancient power of the relic. The relic praised her for a wise choice as it officially acknowledged her as its own. Rosian stood in awe of Great Destruction's true form, feeling the raw power of the stars surging through her veins. With this surge of energy, she was certain she could finally bring her brother back to his senses. Rosian used magic to bind Sian's hands tight. Callie was shocked to find himself restrained, staring at his sister with eyes full of confusion. Rosian declared that once they got home, her brother would definitely be undergoing some very intense mental training. She had stammered Josie's name in total shock. Meanwhile, the dark entity within him mocked the way he allowed himself to be deceived by such a childish trick. Rosian complained that it was exactly because of Sien's bizarre behavior that people were whispering about him like that. Struggling, the girl used the star relic to cleanse the black mist surrounding Callie, urging him to endure the pain because it was almost... Once the dark smoke vanished, Rosian breathed a sigh of relief that she had finally dealt with that terrifying thing. She told her brother he could finally rest easy, yet Sien's face remained pale and completely dazed. Suddenly, Callie collapsed to the floor from total exhaustion. Rosian screamed for her brother in a panic as he instantly lost consciousness. Deep inside the palace, a booming voice of authority rang out, blaming a certain someone for stealing another family's treasure and nearly triggering a truly horrific catastrophe. The head of the Wink family was furious, demanding that the Emperor provide a satisfactory explanation for everything that had happened. The Emperor offered his apologies for keeping the secret and pleaded with Owen to please calm down. But Owen insisted that he was already showing great restraint after everything that had occurred. Owen declared that since the Relic of Great Destruction had officially chosen his daughter, the treasure now belonged to the Winia family. He made it clear he would not tolerate any objections, which left the Emperor completely silent. Then, Owen suddenly shouted Rosian's name, making her jump in terror. He demanded that she provide a very detailed explanation later about why Callian had ended up in such a terrible state. Rosian nervously agreed while sweating bullets, terrified that her father was about to explode with rage. After being told to go rest, Rosian stood dazed outside her door. She wondered if her father was actually okay with her sneaking into the holy sanctuary like that. But more than anything, what Rosian wanted most right now was to run and check on her brother's condition. The sword entity suddenly appeared and screamed for her to take it to see Callie immediately, as it simply could not allow this matter to slide. Rosian wondered why the relic's spirit was still so high on alert even though that darkness had already vanished. While Sen lay recovering, a dark entity in the form of a black serpent mocked him for being so weak against that little girl. It even toyed with the idea of killing Rosian itself, which caused Sen to suddenly snap his eyes open. Sian sat bolt upright and coldly dared the dark serpent to just try and lay a finger on the girl. He stared directly into the eyes of the serpent of chaos and collapse, warning that if it dared, it wouldn't escape unscathed either. Rosian was still incredibly confused, having no idea what the name chaos and collapse actually even meant. The relic's soul explained that the name symbolized the ultimate end of every single thing in existence. She claimed it was a manifestation of all the worst luck and evil in the universe, which made Rosian feel deeply unsettled. The relic warned that she had only managed to drive it away temporarily, and a creature like that doesn't die so easily. It is surely lurking somewhere, biding its time for another chance to return. The arrival of this entity meant that a terrifying wave of chaos was about to come crashing down. The relic reminded Rosian to keep her mind sharp and her senses alert to deal with this looming threat. Rosian suggested that if it was really that dangerous, they should proactively hunt it down and destroy it immediately. The relic agreed, but admitted she had another pressing concern that needed her attention first. She thought back to the muscular men of the Fell House training hard on the field. Rosian was speechless, realizing this relic actually just wanted to go back and ogle handsome guys. The young girl brooded over that strange, monstrous entity, wondering why an ancient relic with such immense power would be so terrified of it. Rosian could not understand why something so terrifying had been stalking Sen all this time. Though its true goal for her brother remained a mystery, her heart was heavy with dread. The girl was determined if that thing dared to approach her brother again, she would not let it escape. Callian stayed in his room, desperately trying to keep his mind clear of those haunting, strange thoughts. The shadow serpent realized that since the relic chose Rosian, the stars had begun watching their presence. It mocked Sen, calling him a man who was all talk but useless in a real fight. The snake reminded him of his near-death experience, admitting they were now hopelessly bound in this mess. It emphasized that Sian was the serpent, and the serpent was Sian completely inseparable now. That meant if Callian ever took a fatal blow, the serpent would feel every bit of that impact. It warned him to be careful and not force its hand against little Rosian. Sian casually dismissed the threat, fully confident his sister could protect herself, a response that left the serpent absolutely fuming with a bitter rage. The entity began to regret choosing someone as stubborn as him to be its physical host. The snake wondered if letting Rosian keep that holy relic sword was safe since she lacked control. Callian insisted that once the relic chooses a master, there is nothing left to do but accept. He felt that having such a legendary treasure belong to Rosian was a truly perfect outcome. Callian found it amusing that his princess might be the only person capable of killing them both. He believed Rosian was the one person who would always love and protect him. The shadow entity wondered if she would still feel that way after seeing the true monster that is hiding behind his face. A sharp knock at the door suddenly cut through the heavy thoughts of those inside the room. A maid stepped inside, her face showing nothing but fear and anxiety. She announced she brought hot tea as ordered by the master for the heir. As she fumbled with the tea service, Callian silently watched her with a cold, piercing gaze. Noticing her trembling, Sen asked if she was terrified to be facing him. He coldly warned her to be careful not to break the fine china with her clumsy hands. The terrified maid bowed and apologized. Too scared to look up, Callian told her to leave the tea and get out of his sight immediately. Once outside, she whispered that the rumors about how terrifying Sian could be were absolutely true. Rosian had been waiting outside, She peeked into the room, gently asking if her big brother was finally awake yet. Sen's face lit up when he saw his sister, and he softly called her name. Rosianne asked how he felt and urged him to rest until he was completely healthy again. She started to mention the temple incident but quickly apologized, fearing it would tire him. Callie admitted his memories of the event were currently fragmented and very blurry. Rosianne told him not to force himself to remember such painful and unhappy things. She thought about how that collapsing entity must have tortured her brother, causing him intense pain. Seeing her mumbling to herself, Callie asked what she had just said. Rosianne realized he remembered nothing of the darkness and feared the truth would be a massive shock. She quickly brushed it off and urged him to get well so the whole family could finally go home. Sian smiled, though his mind remained deeply troubled. Looking at his pale face, Rosianne felt a sharp pang of sorrow for his fragile body. She spoke seriously, telling him she had thought carefully about an important matter. Rosianne suggested that once they returned home, they would search for a special elixir. Sian was shocked to hear her use that term. She explained that his star fevers were becoming more frequent and intense as he approached adulthood and maturity. She believed he needed to learn to stabilize his own mana instead of relying on her lullabies. Rosianne believed this medicine would help him stabilize and defend himself against that lingering shadow entity. She excitedly asked if he wanted the medicine crafted into jewelry like a ring or a necklace. Sian replied gently. Having Rosianne by his side was more than enough for him. He insisted that her presence was the only thing he truly needed to feel safe right now in this moment. Hearing those words, Rosianne called her brother's name with a thoughtful expression. Suddenly, she snapped, accusing him of not listening and emphasizing that he really did need the medicine. Sian gave a playful smile and asked why she couldn't just be his medicine. Rosianne refused him flatly, leaving Callie disappointed and wondering why. She explained that turning a human into a conduit for energy brought far too many unnecessary and dangerous risks. They could not be together every single moment, and if the medicine maker died first, the survivor would suffer for the rest of their entire life. Callie grew silent, eventually admitting that his younger sister's logical analysis was actually based on very solid evidence. Rosianne said she had researched the matter deeply and knew many examples of tragic historical endings. Sian smiled, noting she would soon need a remedy too, so they should just provide medicine for one another. Rosianne wondered why her brother was being so unusually stubborn today. She could not understand why he would make such a bizarre and strange suggestion. She blushed, thinking only couples who had sworn to be together for life would ever do things like that. Rosianne placed a hand firmly on Callie's shoulder and called his name with serious conviction. She insisted that such a thing was definitely not something that members of the same family should do for each other. Callie could only repeat the word family, his face falling with disappointment after hearing his younger sister's firm declaration. Rosianne worried she might have offended her brother, but she hoped he would eventually understand the true feelings in her heart. She told herself that as soon as she returned, she had to find that medicine before it became far too late. Rosianne sat in a lavish palace room until a knock came. The servant announced that the head of the house requested her. She answered immediately and prepared to leave, whispering to herself that this important moment had finally arrived at last. Rosianne remembered her father's warning about explaining Sien's condition in detail. She was terrified of being scolded by the High Lords. She tried to stay calm by promising to tell the truth, though she was surprised to find other clan leaders there. Rosianne politely offered a warm morning greeting to everyone currently present in the meeting room. Lord Dorian Lila just stared at her with a cold, mysterious gaze. Rosianne felt uneasy being ignored and wondered why they all looked so incredibly angry and frustrated by her presence. She decided to move quickly toward Lord Owen just to escape the suffocating and heavy atmosphere inside the Grand Hall. Seeing Owen standing out on the balcony, she called his name as she hurried toward him. Owen turned and greeted his young daughter with a gentle smile. He immediately asked if she had safely returned with the legendary artifact of mass destruction. Her father's sudden and direct question caught Rosianne completely off guard. She hesitantly revealed that everything was currently at the field training grounds. Hearing this, her father looked confused and asked why it was kept in such a place. Noticing his growing suspicion, she stammered and played dumb to hide the fact that she only snuck over there to watch the knights training their muscles. The man cut straight to the point, asserting that she surely knew exactly why she was summoned. With a stern expression, he demanded a full and honest account of everything that happened yesterday. She paused to think carefully before continuing the conversation. Owen mentioned how she used the artifact to purge the collapsing chaos entity from her brother. He asked with concern if the power had caused her any harm, but Rosianne confirmed she was perfectly fine. She explained that the artifact's true target had been Sen, not her. Owen let out a sigh of relief, glad that both of his children were safe. Still, he muttered to himself that he really wouldn't mind if that boy Sen just stayed asleep for a little while longer. Rosianne asked him what he just said, but he casually replied that it was nothing. She was certain that darkness had exploited his weakness during the star fever to launch its vicious and sudden attack. With fire in her eyes, Rosianne promised that if she ever saw it again, she'd teach it a lesson. Owen smiled and stroked her hair, calling her a reliable support and expressing his pride that the relic had chosen her. However, he also knew deep down that not everyone would be happy about her power. Owen explained that since she now mastered the sword, other families would start watching her and looking for ways to restrain her. Rosian suddenly realized why those other lords had been staring at her with such judgmental and scrutinizing eyes earlier. Owen promised that no matter who the enemy was, the Wink family would always protect her. His kind words made her feel truly safe. Rosian looked at her father with wide, emotional eyes. She gave a bright smile and obeyed him very politely. She walked away with a skip in her step, feeling like she wasn't afraid of anything. She felt so happy receiving Owen's deep love and care. But while she was lost in thought, Rosian suddenly slammed into a stranger's chest. The impact left her dizzy, and she quickly started to stammer out an apology. But the moment she saw the man's face clearly, Rosian froze in a state of total shock. The man reached out kindly and asked if she was hurt. He politely apologized for his own lack of attention while walking. Rosian began to tremble, her breath quickening as a terrifying fear from her past suddenly came rushing back. The young girl was struck with horror when she realized the person smiling at her was her own murderer from 12 years ago. Memories rushed back of the brutal power struggle for the Kilgest family throne. Everyone whispered back then that Fian was the strongest candidate to lead the clan. However, Rosietti, known by her title as the Rose Princess, was also an incredibly formidable rival in that race. She was a brilliant magic prodigy, a genius whose natural talents left everyone around her in complete awe. At the decisive moment, Fian declared it was the end for her, but Rosietti did not flinch or back down. She once believed such an attack could never touch her power. But shock took over as blood poured from her mouth and her body began to collapse. Rosietti realized she had been hit by a wicked death curse, unable to understand why her opponent could be so heartless. Through her eyes at that moment, Fian appeared to be nothing more than a cold and ruthless monster. She died filled with resentment, watching his silhouette stand tall and proud upon the altar of glory. That man was none other than Fian Kilgest, the current successor to the prestigious Kilgest family. He still looked at her with the gentle smile of a true gentleman. Rosian remembered the very first news she heard after her rebirth was that he had successfully taken the position of clan leader. The little girl clenched her fists in fury, thinking about the dirty tricks he used to snatch that throne for himself. Seeing the child staring so intently at him, Fian spoke up, his voice filled with a sense of curious wonder. Rosian suddenly spotted the necklace around his neck and realized with a shock it was her old treasure. Fian asked if she knew what the item was. Rosian flusteredly denied it and just said it was beautiful. He introduced it as the planetarium, a treasure that every member of the Kilgest family carries. Fian added that a child from the Winiak family probably would not be able to understand its true, deep value. Rosian silently cursed him for being a snob, since that was the very item she had used throughout her entire past life. She choked back her anger, wondering how he dared to casually wear the belongings of the person he had murdered. Fian noticed how much attention she was paying and curiously asked if she was actually interested in the piece. He generously held the necklace out in front of Rosian and told her she was more than welcome to touch it. Rosian reached out with a trembling hand, her mind a chaotic mess at the sight of her old treasure. However, her hand froze just before touching the glowing crystal. She suddenly realized that if she touched her old mana, she might activate it and her true identity would be exposed. Rosian quickly pulled her hand back and refused. She made an excuse that she would wait for another time to witness his magic. Fian gave a polite smile and apologized for taking up so much of the young girl's precious time. He said goodbye and promised to meet again as they both turned to walk away. Rosian silently whispered her treasure's name with a heart full of bitterness. The little girl settled on a firm resolution to find a way to take back everything that belonged to her from that killer. Driven by a fierce hunger for power, Rosian swore that she would personally carry out this revenge with her very own hands. Fian stepped into a private, sealed room where the other powerful family heads were already waiting for his arrival. The matriarch of the Kilgest family immediately asked how the meeting went. Fian confirmed things went as expected, noting the girl reacted strongly to the necklace. She asserted that based on that specific reaction, the child from the Winiak family was very likely the soul of Rosietti. She turned to the other clan leaders and asked what they planned to do next regarding this strange situation. Master Owen kept a perfectly calm face, which made her cry out in shock at how unbelievable this whole story was. She revealed the reason she summoned them was because she suspected the Resurrection Crystal Holy Relic was hidden inside that child's body. Dorian Lila admitted that, at first, he also believed such a thing was absolutely and completely impossible. However, he had personally felt the distinct energy of the crystal radiating directly from the young girl, Rosian. He angrily questioned if Owen actually knew about this massive secret. Dorian expressed his worry, unable to understand what Owen was truly plotting in his mind. He insisted that another equally serious issue was the fact that the girl had already become the master of the Great Destruction. This meant the Winiak family now held two holy relics, destroying the balance of power, and they absolutely had to recover them. A set of firm, steady footsteps echoed through the air, forcing everyone in the room to turn their heads and look. Owen Winiak suddenly appeared, which caused both the Kilgis matriarch and Dorian to jump back in total surprise. He casually mocked them, suggesting they seemed to be discussing something very fun without him being present. Dorian immediately confronted Owen, asking if he truly knew the secrets involving the child from his own household. He mentioned that Rosian had been brought back to life using the stolen resurrection crystal relic from the RER family. Owen realized the situation was turning sour now that the enemy had investigated this far. However, he kept a cold face and acted like he had no idea what they meant. Dorian roared in a fury that playing dumb was useless and threatened to cut the girl open to take back their treasure. Owen's eyes flashed with a warning. If anyone dared to touch that child, his family would strike. The Wink family wouldn't let it slide. A terrifying silence gripped the two lords as they faced the raw killing intent radiating from Owen now. The KGES matriarch spoke up, reminding everyone that great destruction is the most dangerous artifact among the relics. She stared at the flaming sword, questioning if Owen could truly guarantee that the Wink family wouldn't turn their backs and betray the alliance. With such terrifying destructive power in their hands, their loyalty was a concern that weighed heavily on everyone present. Owen frowned, asking what she was implying. Then, Regina Kess suddenly demanded that Owen hand over Rosian Windiak to her immediately. She wanted to take the girl back to the Empire. Meanwhile, Rosian just kept smiling brightly, seemingly unaware of the high-stakes drama unfolding around her. Stunned, Owen repeated her demand to hand over his very own daughter. Regina quickly clarified she didn't mean to take her away forever. She proposed a plan where the young girl would spend time rotating between the Delphian Empire and the Kingdom of Ab every single year. Owen objected fiercely, arguing that such an arrangement was nothing more than turning the poor girl into a political hostage. Dorian of House Layla pointed out that Rosian didn't just master great destruction, she also carried the Wink family relic inside her body. He insisted the other families had a legal right to supervise her until they finally recovered the precious resurrection crystal. Dorian pressured him further, asking if Owen really wanted to go to war against all the other transcendent families at once. Under that intense pressure, Owen suggested they directly ask the person who mattered most, Rosian herself. He declared he would respect and follow whatever the girl wished. Watching from a distance, Sian's mind began to wander, recalling old, fading memories of a mysterious woman from his past. He remembered falling down as a young boy when a beautiful woman approached him to ask if he was all right. Back then, she had saved him from a wild boar, leaving him confused as he asked her who she really was. The woman gently introduced herself as Rossetti. She had smiled at the young boy Sian in a picturesque garden filled with blooming roses. Sian thought he believed she died in the war for the family headship. He never expected they would ever meet again like this. He was shocked to see her return in the body of a child, unable to understand how she could have been resurrected. He sensed that everyone surrounding them now was an enemy, just waiting for a chance to strike at her, especially that man, and Fian, who shadowed her closely. Kalian considered him the most dangerous threat of all. Kalian thought that letting her stay in the Empire, far away from him, might actually be safer for Rossetti. He clenched his fists tightly, remembering how she saved his life in the distant past. He told himself that now was finally the time for him to step up and protect that girl. Rosian was completely stunned to hear the Empire suddenly wanted to keep her. She wondered if it was because she awakened the power of great destruction, and Owen sadly confirmed her suspicions. Owen explained that the other family heads were very unhappy seeing her become the chosen master of the star relic. He thought it best not to reveal to her that they had discovered the legendary resurrection crystal inside her tiny body. Owen was certain that Rosian had absolutely no idea that such a powerful thing was currently dwelling within her. Looking at his little daughter, Owen sighed, thinking that she was still far too young. He assured her that the Feigl family, where they were staying, would guarantee her a home and absolute safety. He asked Rosian what she truly wanted, promising that everyone agreed to respect her own wishes above all else. Suddenly, Sian burst into the room, shouting that it would never happen. He was completely shocked by the plan to leave Rosian in the Empire, ignoring her frantic warnings that he shouldn't even be moving around yet. Sian demanded to stay in the Empire with her, forcing Owen to finally speak up. Owen explained that transcendent beings aren't allowed to leave their territories without permission, and Rosian was the only special exception. Kalian ignored every rule and exception, feeling that his father's words meant absolutely nothing at a time like this. He firmly declared he would never hand Rosian over to anyone. Rosian stood there frozen, completely shocked by his violent reaction and her brother's overwhelming sense of fierce protection. She realized that if she didn't follow the Lord's orders, this could easily spiral into a terrible national conflict. Though Sian tried to reassure her not to worry, Rosian firmly asked him to just wait a moment. Sian's face showed pure shock when his younger sister interrupted him. They stood facing each other in the heavy, tense air as Owen watched them both very closely. Rosian clearly announced that she had decided to visit the Empire at least once every year. This decision left Kalian frozen, feeling as if he'd been struck by lightning. He looked at her with eyes full of raw pain and disappointment. Owen accepted the idea and said he would personally discuss it further with the other family heads. Heartbroken, Sian ran outside as Rosienne called after him in worry. That night, under a bright full moon, Rosienne slowly wandered through the garden, looking for her brother everywhere. She called her brother's name as she walked, hoping he hadn't gone too far away from her. Finally, she found Sian huddled all alone on a stone step in a quiet corner. Rosienne gently asked if he really didn't ever want to speak to her again. She urged him to stop pouting like that and try to be happy again. Sian suddenly turned, his face wet with tears that seemed to freeze time itself. Rosienne felt a surge of panic, watching her brother break down, his voice choked with real sorrow. Sian asked her once more if she truly wanted to stay in this place. Confused, Rosienne reminded him she had already promised. Sian asked bitterly why she would ever make a choice like that. He grabbed her hand, reminding her she promised to stay by his side. Rosienne watched him, wondering how her life had spiraled into this mess. She remembered her true identity as a kill guest, even though she was reborn now as Rosienne Winiak. She calculated that once Sian grew up, her old powers would finally return to their former glory. Then she would return to the Kilgist estate and expose the brutal truth about her wrongful death. Rosienne was determined to take back everything stolen by the person who had heartlessly murdered her in the past. But she knew these secrets were impossible to explain to Sian. She called out to her brother, her voice soft and full of tenderness. Rosienne told him he was the only real family she had left. Seeing him so broken made her own heart ache with a sharp pain. Through his tears, Sian begged her for them to go home right now. Rosienne explained she wasn't leaving forever. She would visit the kingdom often, so there was no need to worry. But for Sian, being apart for even half the time was a total disaster. He screamed that the Empire was trying to steal half of her life right out of his hands. Callian confessed the heavy truth. He simply could not imagine living without her. He fell to his knees, clutching her hand, asking if she could really survive without him there. Rosienne realized Sian's love was deeper than she ever imagined. Seeing him so desperate, his head bowed in defeat, she felt a heavy weight in her chest. Sian sobbed, saying he had a good brother and an amazing head of the family. Rosienne asked with a smile if the Abi kingdom was really that much better, trying to soothe him. Deep down, she knew she belonged to the Kilgist clan. It was a cold, competitive world where she never felt a single shred of love. She told herself her only true family now consisted of her brother and her father, Owen. To comfort him, Rosienne offered him any wish he wanted. She promised that if it was in her power, she would do it. Sian squeezed her hand and decided to save that wish for a special moment later on. He made her promise right there, by the star of Winia. Rosienne gave him a bright smile, letting him know she understood perfectly. She formally declared that as Rosienne Winiak, she would fulfill one wish for her big brother. Under a beautiful sky raining flowers, she made a sacred vow in the name of Winia's star. They shared a warm look and a smile, sealing the deep, unbreakable bond between siblings. From that day, her life traveling between the Empire and the Kingdom officially began. Surprisingly, everything went much better than she ever expected within the Delphian Empire. Rosienne remembered her past life as Rossetti. The only teacher she truly respected was Regina. Now, she had a real chance to meet the matriarch again under a brand new identity. Rosienne was so excited and told her she wanted to work by her side while staying in the Empire. Looking at her old mentor, her eyes glistened as she silently called her master with deep emotion. She prayed for forgiveness since she couldn't reveal her true self yet. Time moved quickly, and soon she was 16 years old in the Delphian Empire. But the memory of Emphion killing her was still fresh, a haunting reminder of how her life as Rossetti had ended. Shadows of her violent death returned to her mind, filled with the lingering, blood-soaked images that still haunted her. As she lay dying, she angrily asked why Emphion would treat her with such cold cruelty. Rosienne snapped awake from the nightmare, dripping with sweat, still terrified by the memory of those glowing red eyes. She sat there wondering if that was actually how she looked during the final moments of her life. Rosienne felt a growing sense of anxiety because those vivid dreams of her own death were happening more and more frequently lately. The voice of the Great Destruction Relic spirit announced that she had finally decided to wake up at last. She noted that Rosienne looked like she'd seen a ghost, making her wonder if she should have even woken her up. Rosienne figured the good intention was enough. Meanwhile, the relic urged her to snap out of it and get moving. The relic excitedly said that once she was ready, they would head straight to the training grounds. Rosienne was shocked to see it was still so early. The relic spirit admitted she never got tired of staring at the knights and their muscular bodies, making Rosienne realize her personality would never change. At the Fiel clan training grounds, knights are pushing their limits under the bright morning sun. Rosienne peeks her head out, waving to Luis with a bright, radiant smile on her face. Luis immediately warns her not to shout his name so loudly in front of everyone. Rosienne simply smiles back at him, but in that moment, she realizes a hidden truth that had completely escaped her notice until now. She remembers he was the same boy she had been so close to in her past life as Rossetti. Back then, he was much smaller than her. boldly declaring that Rossetti was his fiancée just like his father had instructed him. Rosian marvels at how quickly men grow up, especially when she compares him to her own brother, Luis. While he snaps at her, asking if she is actually even listening to a single word he says, Julius maintains his cold demeanor, reminding her that she should not visit places like this so often because she is not a little child anymore. Instead of being intimidated by his rejection, she looks him in the eye and firmly declares she is here to carry out the great destruction. Even after her bold proclamation, Julius keeps a stone-cold expression, acting as if nothing out of the ordinary is happening at all. Even though she holds two powerful relics, the Great Destruction and the Resurrection Crystal, Rosian wonders if she is being far too careless about the dangers lurking in the shadows. The terrifying truth is that Dorian Lila is plotting to dissect her to reclaim the ancient treasure, and he is patiently waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Because of this, Rosian has been constantly sending letters and meeting with the Emperor to discuss these high-stakes matters. The young girl keeps pleading with the king to find a way to stop the Layla clan from getting anywhere near her within the empire. Luis wonders to himself just how much longer he can actually keep that man at bay. All the while, Rosian is getting completely distracted by a tiny little butterfly fluttering nearby. He lets out a heavy sigh of frustration, seeing that she has absolutely no sense of the looming danger, instead choosing to focus on how cute the little butterfly is. Luis wonders if she truly has no idea that the resurrection crystal is hidden right there, deep inside her own body. Rosian happily thinks that in just a few days, she will finally return to the kingdom to see her father Owen and her brother. She smiles to herself, wondering what her brother is doing back home right now. She silently hopes that he is not sitting somewhere crying all by himself just because he misses her so much. Darkness swallows the ancient castle as a piercing, blood-curdling scream rings out, desperately begging anyone to just stay away. A poor man is being strangled by a surge of dark energy, barely managing to call his attacker a monster. Agonized screams echo through the dark air, heavy with the scent of blood. Sen stands there, his face splattered with red. His eyes have turned cold and ruthless, a terrifying contrast to the gentle person he usually is.